Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 27th of September, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that a lot of different ways. One of those is pretty easy on the phone, 1-800-472-0391. That's the Alaska Weather Information Line. Of course, you can find us online at weather.gov/Alaska, and that has a lot of links that will take you to the places that matter the most to you. If you're in the northern sections of the interior of Alaska or the west coast, weather.gov/Fairbanks is where you'd like to start. South Central and Southwest in the Aleutians, weather.gov/Anchorage, or in the Panhandle, weather.gov/Juneau. For aviation concerns, of course, weather.gov/AAWU. You already know that site very well. We appreciate all your comments and concerns about that, and we continue to work on that for you. If you ever can't find what you're looking for around Alaska, simply email me. david.snyder@noaa.gov is the easy way to find me, and I'm happy to help anytime I can. Here's a look at what's going on across Southeast tonight. Obviously, a lot of rain there. If you're in Southeast, you know a couple things. It has been pretty wet in the last 24 hours, and it's probably pretty warm. We'll get to that in just a minute. A little tough to see here on this map since it's such a small area, but up around the Dehne River, a flood advisory is posted. That'll take us through tomorrow. We're concerned about the additional rainfall on top of about 2 to 5 inches in general around the entire northern sections of Southeast. That has brought the Dehne River inlet, the Dehne River up. We're looking for that to crest probably later tonight. So it hasn't crested yet, but as we get closer to midnight and early tomorrow morning, it will likely crest at that point. The Montana Creek around Juneau on the northern side there has reached its minor flood stage already and probably go up just a little bit more. Conditions should ease a little bit more after it stops raining tomorrow, and that'll happen after that front passes. So flooding concerns are in northern parts of Southeast. If you look at some of the rainfall totals, impressive stuff up here across northern sections of Southeast, especially around the Dehne. Around 2 inches there, and that's just the gauge. Many other places have seen a lot more than just that one spot on the gauge. So there's a lot of rain falling in the region. You go up toward Yakutat, the gauge has measured 2.9 inches of rain there. Same for areas up around into Glacier Bay. Around Juneau, you can see varying returns there from the readings anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to 2 3/4 of an inch. Out towards Sitka, nearly 3 inches. And again, that's just the estimates at that one particular spot. The overall estimate is, in general, about 2 to 5 inches with another 1 to 3 on the way. So again, flooding concerns, though minor, are present in parts of Southeast. Remember to do your part and turn around, don't drown. Don't drive through flooded roadways or crossings. Just an illustration of what's going on with the weather temperature-wise across the state early this afternoon. You can see there's cold air up north and across the west coast, across the Aleutians, across South Central. But look at the heat that's moving up through Southeast. Upper 50s and lower 60s across the region. Just a sign of how wet and warm the air is across Southeast today. And here's the big weather picture with the satellite, and you can see how all of this is being pulled into Southeast. Just a moisture conveyor belt lingering right over southeastern Alaska this afternoon. In the meantime, there is some drier weather to be had across the interior. Didn't see a whole lot of that fog across early this morning. At least most of the sensors weren't reporting a whole lot of that by mid to late morning there, so not too dense, but there is a potential that we'll see some of that develop across the north coast as we get through tonight and early tomorrow morning. So the threat is still there, and there is another front dropping south and east that's going to bring some cold air in. The other concern with that, of course, is that it's going to strengthen some westerly winds right into the Chukchi Coast. So anywhere west of Barrow and down the coast probably needs to start thinking about what's going to happen if you get westerly winds 20 to 30 miles per hour here in the next 24 to 36 hours there. There are no warnings, watches, or advisories out for any high surf conditions there just yet, but something to be mindful of as we go forward. Out west, you can see a lot of stratus. High pressure is in charge just south of Shemya. There it is, 1,027 millibars. A trough of low pressure to the north of that, and here's the colder air, the first round of it. Another one will come in behind it. Low pressure sitting just north of the Alaska Range. It's trapped some very light rain showers across the central interior. Everything north of that seems pretty dry. And then we get into the Gulf of Alaska. Different story there. A lot of warm and wet air surging northward into southeast. And once again, 2 to 5 inches of rain in general in the last 24 hours there. Parts of South Central have seen very modest amounts of rainfall compared to that. The low pressure is at 988 millibars. As we get into tonight, the front will start to weaken and fall apart. After this passes through, the heavier rainfall will come to an end for southeast, and your rivers will gradually return to normal stages there. So good news there. Don't expect a whole lot of much heavier rainfall behind what you're expecting through the rest of today and tonight. Out across south and west, you can see rainfall and showers across parts of Bristol Bay, and then hit and miss showers across the Aleutians all the way out toward Adak and Atka and south and west of St. Matthew Island, and even into the Bering Strait. Still warm enough there for liquid precipitation, but not for long as that cold front drops southward. Periods of rain and snow may find its way across the Chukchi coast. Look for the snow across the higher terrain and rain and snow along the coast. But again, with this comes that chance for some westerly winds that could be as strong as 20 to 30 miles per hour. So once we get a little bit better look at some of the forecast models and can kind of cinch up the details for you there, we will certainly let you know what that looks like for your communities along the Chukchi coast. A trough of low pressure sits across the interior and the Alcan border. That will keep some showers and fog a little bit more likely there, especially in the morning as we get into Thursday afternoon. Showers and low ceilings there. You'll see that coming up in the aviation section here in just a few minutes. And showers will continue for southeast by Friday. Things may be drying out for northern parts of southeast. Look at the changes there. Maybe even a little bit of sunshine and a dry patch for a day or two. That's probably going to be welcome. Across South Central, low pressure is still sitting just east of Kodiak Island. Showers slung up into Prince William Sound and maybe some breaks around the Cook Inlet region. Showers linger along a frontal boundary just south of the interior and over the Alaska Range. Some snow showers east of Arctic Village and Kaktovik, and here comes another push of colder air across the Chukchi coast. So once again, watching those westerly winds in the region. Now, if you look out west, high pressure is still in its same old place. It has not moved now for about 24 to 48 hours. Under that, we can expect some occasional areas of fog, especially in the morning before that lifts. Showers out across Kiska and points west, but then we get into a heavier band of wetter and warmer air, and that's probably going to start changing things up across the western Bering Sea as we go into your Friday afternoon. So a lot of things changing across the region. A lot of rain in southeast now that looks to be drying up. Showers that linger across south central but seem to be kind of slowly falling apart. Colder air and a couple rounds of that working into the northwest, and perhaps a weather pattern change out in the west. So keep your eyes on all those things heading into the weekend. Here are low temperatures for your Thursday morning. Southeast stays pretty mild, lower 50s there. South Central back in the mid 40s to about 47 in Kodiak, mild there as well. Just above freezing in Fairbanks, but there will be some areas in the outlying regions that probably get close to it, like Tanana. 20s and 30s for the North Slope, 34 in Nome, Southwest in the mid to upper 30s. St. Paul, you're looking at 40 and 43 for Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. A high of 51 there tomorrow. 49 in Bethel, Nome 43 degrees. Looks like the middle Tanana Valley will sneak up to about 50 degrees or so, mid 30s and above freezing for the North Slope. And southeast still very mild, mid to upper 50s there. Prince William Sound upper 40s and lower 50s all the way down to Kodiak. Morning low temperatures on Friday, getting cold around Anaktuvuk Pass, 15 degrees there, 20s for the North Slope. Kotzebue Sound just a hair above freezing for many folks there, lower 30s and just below freezing around the YK Delta, including Bethel, all the way up to McGrath. Bristol Bay temperatures in the upper 30s, 44 around Kodiak. Southeast back in the upper 40s and lower 50s, and South Central in the lower 40s with high temperatures on Friday in the 20s and 30s in the north. Norton Sound temperatures including Unalakleet at 41, Galena 42. Middle Tanana Valley in the upper 40s there, all the way eastward toward Eagle and Northway in the lower 50s. Warmer still in South Central. Southeast, you're looking at temperatures in the mid to upper 50s once again, all the way from Sitka to Ketchikan and Craig. Upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. Bristol Bay temperatures just shy of 50 degrees. St. Paul and St. George around 45. And Nome and St. Lawrence Island looking at high temperatures on Friday back in the lower 40s. Colder air is still coming our way. We'll keep an eye on what happens with those stronger westerly winds if they develop.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Time for a look at your flying weather across Alaska now, and IFR conditions around the higher terrain of southeast all the way up into the Chilkoot and White Pass will start your day tomorrow, and along the northern and western edges of the Alaska Range, including Lake Clark and Merrill Pass and into Rainy and Windy Pass, even Isabel Pass at times. Portage Pass looks a little low to start, and also across the Chukchi Coast into the Kotzebue Sound region, Seward Peninsula, and the eastern end of the Brooks Range. As we get into the afternoon tomorrow, look for improvements across southeast. Still looking at some low decks there and poor visibility around Chilkoot and White Pass, as well as areas in portions of Prince William Sound, but you will see improvement there around the western Alaska Range. It looks like IFR through most of the day, and watch for a band of IFR all the way from the Brooks Range and into the central and upper Yukon Valley, as well as parts of the Beaufort Seacoast. By Friday morning, that band continues to push eastward. We'll see poor visibility and low decks again across the Alaska Range. Watch for some changes there by the afternoon. And around Portage Pass, look for hit and miss IFR, as well as areas around Kodiak Island and into the Barren Islands region. Notice southeast is seeing pretty decent improvement by Friday morning, and that should continue into Friday afternoon, with many areas along the Alaska Range looking for improvement. IFR is expected there just south of Atkasuk, westward Point Hope and Point Layout toward the Kotzebue Sound region, with MVFR and widespread MVFR across most of the Bering Sea and most of the Kodiak Island region. Let's check your pass conditions. And for tomorrow, Thursday, Anaktuvik Pass expected to see MVFR conditions pretty much all day long. Same goes for Adigan Pass there, marginal conditions for your Thursday. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, as we saw, IFR conditions should rule the roost for all of your Thursday afternoon. Rainy Pass looks to be mostly IFR there. Same for Windy Pass and Isabel Pass, likely IFR through most of Thursday. Improvements again coming on Friday. As we get into Tenita Pass, MVFR conditions there through most of the day. And it looks like Portage Pass should be okay. IFR conditions expected. And for Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see IFR listed there. Freezing levels, notice that we've got some cool pockets there running around the northern Gulf. That's all around that area of low pressure here, but it's also dragging in some warmer air in behind it through the Cook Inlet region and down toward Kodiak Island. Those levels up to about 6,000 feet. But you look up north and notice that northerly wind we've had developing for the last several days is starting to push further southward. That's pushing those levels further south toward the YK Delta, toward the Seward Peninsula, as low as 2 to about 4,000 feet. You can see the alternative, though, that is the warmer air moving northward with levels as much as 2 to even 6,000 feet closer to the Alcan border and just east of Arctic Village. As we look at icing potential, it's still rated as isolated moderate for many across the central and northern parts of southeast, all the way across the northern Gulf. Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, down toward Sand Point, generally above 7 to about 10,000 feet there. As you get a little bit further north, the air dries up a little bit more, but you're still going to run into some patchy icing potential, generally above the eastern Alaska Range, above 8,000 feet, and some of that into the upper Yukon Valley as well. We'll watch for some colder air to descend over the next couple days, and with that comes another threat of isolated moderate just off the Chukchi Coast. That's running above 5,000 feet. Here's the jet stream, and that colder patch of air is moving southward with that northwesterly flow coming in out of the Arctic. Wind speeds there up to 95 knots at around 30,000 feet or so. The main core of the jet stream is still out over the North Pacific. Descending band of that air out of the Aleutians and the Bering Sea at 110 knots, moving from more west to east across the central Pacific, and then back across the south to northern extents there of southeastern Alaska around 100 knots. So again, most of Alaska is still under control of this very broad trough. At 9,000 feet, low pressure is a little bit closer to Kodiak Island here. We have our broad southerly flow running around 15 to 25 knots. Northwesterly flow coming into the Chukchi Coast, 25 knots there. Northwesterlies across the YK Delta, around 20 to 25. And for many in the Aleutians, look for winds coming in from the north and northwest around 15 to 20 knots. At 3,000 feet, low pressure is pretty much stacked and packed in the same place. South and easterly winds across the eastern Gulf, broad westerlies across the Brooks Range running around 20 knots or so, and northwesterlies coming in across the YK Delta and turning a little bit more to the north and east as they cross over the Alaska Peninsula and the chain between 20 and 25. Again, the strongest winds out across the upper Yukon Valley, about 30 knots or so from the south and southwest after they cross over the Alaska Range. And you might find a little bit of chop there, reaching considerable moderate occasionally. Look for below 6,000 feet as you head out toward the Copper River Basin, below 6,000 feet for central and southern parts of southeast, and also across southwestern Alaska, the Wood-Tikchik Mountains, and also across the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back in just a few minutes with the rest of your marine weather.
Visually, by looking at a map, or better yet, a satellite image, the impending dilemma is readily apparent. The Hubbard Glacier, Alaska's largest tidewater glacier, is advancing. It has, and it is likely that it will close off and permanently seal Russell Fjord. The lake level will rise from natural drainage. Once the lake level reaches 130 feet, it is likely to overflow at its southern end into the old Setuck and then the mainstream of the Setuck River. The effects would be devastating and should be prevented if at all possible. From its surface, the Setuck River, located in southeast Alaska near the small village of Yakutat, looks like many other gorgeous crystal clear water Alaskan streams. But on closer analysis, a glimpse beneath the surface illustrates the fabric from which true legends are woven. The Setuck is one of the most, if not the most, productive and prolific river systems given its size and water volume in all of Alaska. The great diversity of salmonids in the river is an anomaly of the finest kind. Few rivers host all 5 species of Pacific salmon. Dog salmon, pink salmon, silver salmon, sockeye salmon, and king salmon all prosper in the Setuck. In addition, 2 distinct runs of wild steelhead, resident rainbow trout, and both migrant and resident Dolly Varden char thrive and flourish in the bounties of this legend. While the main stem of the Setuck is only slightly more than 20 miles long, a small river or stream by any criteria, its entire length provides exceptional spawning or rearing habitat for one species or another. In addition to the miles and miles of exceptional spawning areas, overhanging and submerged riparian vegetation as well as large woody debris provide abundant cover, shade, and food sources for the emergent fry, fingerlings, and salmon and trout smolt. The Setuck River's exceptionally high salmonid productions are thought to be primarily driven by the river's stable hydrologic regime, high base flow, low gradient, and high levels of dissolved nutrients. In underwater scenes such as we see here, mature steelhead, along with 4 species of salmon fry, in addition to dollies and rainbows, are proof of the river's incredibly productive qualities. It is little wonder that this magnificent river ecosystem has produced annual historical commercial salmon harvests ranging in excess of 1.5 million pounds of fish. That, of course, is in addition to the hundreds of thousands of in-river salmon required for escapement annually and the annual sport and subsistence harvests. To steelhead fishermen from around the world, the Setuck River is legend. All steelhead in the river are wild stock and weigh in at greater than a 10-pound average. Many specimens over 40 inches and 20 pounds are taken each year. The fishery is basically catch and release, another non-consumptive use of the river system. The Setuck River gives up its steelhead treasures reluctantly. To be able with a fly rod to pursue, land, and delicately release a powerful wild silvery dynamo in a clear water stream of this size is an extraordinarily exhilarating and pleasurable commune with nature, one which can seldom, if ever, be encountered anywhere else in the world, under the watchful eye of bald eagles and brown bears. The Setuck River also encompasses the cultural legends of local Tlingit Indians, the native inhabitants of the area, many of whom for centuries lived on the river. It is an all-encompassing legend which includes the old-growth forests that surround the river, the brown bears, bald eagles, mergansers, and other small and big game animals that find the Setuck River a vital link in their food chains in this dynamic ecosystem. The Tlingit Indian subsistence culture is steeped in traditional harvests from this legend, the Setuck River. Additionally, the United States Congress considered the Setuck legendary when it included the river for study for possible inclusion in the wild and scenic river systems. While the state and federal governments wanted the Setuck included, local folks preferred a joint city-state-federal management scheme which wouldn't bring instant fame and hordes of visitors to this incredible and truly wild and scenic river. The forces of nature in Alaska can and have over the years dealt catastrophic blows to communities, infrastructures, and the environment in the form of earthquakes, forest fires, floods, and typhoon-force winds, as well as bone-chilling cold snaps. Now comes a new recipe for catastrophic riverine disaster, an advancing glacier. Borrowing parts of a recent narrative in Alaska Magazine, April 2003, concisely describes the dilemma. Quote, "At a time when most glaciers in Alaska are retreating, the massive Hubbard Glacier is advancing and threatening the river. Last July, the glacier surged forward, pushing a gravel moraine up against Gilbert Point and sealing off the mouth of Russell Fjord. The resulting Russell Lake quickly filled with runoff and snowmelt. The water rose more than 60 feet above sea level before breaking through the moraine on August 14th and releasing trapped harbor seals, sea otters, and porpoises. A similar event occurred in May of 1986. Scientists and officials who monitor the glacier's movements say that sooner or later, the glacier will permanently seal off Russell Fjord. When that occurs, the rising lake will likely overflow into the Sept River watershed, flooding the river and potentially wiping out the salmon and steelhead fisheries. Some have suggested that we just, quote, let nature take its course, unquote. However, those who have seen the exceptional beauty of the river, those who have observed the unique productivity of the Sept watershed and its ecosystems, know that destruction, either by man or by Mother Nature, of the Sept River as we now know it, is simply not an acceptable option. That is why those who have visited and seen and interacted with and come to know the Sept River, whether from around the world or around the state, share the passion for a vision by local Yakutat residents which involves preserving the Sept River in its present state.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Time now for a quick check of your sea ice forecast, and as you can see, the analysis today is showing that the higher concentration, above 80% ice, is well offshore of the North Slope there. Barrow, you're looking at about 400 nautical miles to the north, and Kaktovik about 150 nautical miles to the north and east there. Growth is expected to take place, but keep in mind one thing that may inhibit some of that are those strong westerly winds coming across with the next wave of colder air. Anytime you want to check out the sea ice, do so at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. That's on our weather.gov page there for Alaska. Thursday's marine forecast in southeast, still a little bit breezy this afternoon and this evening, but it looks like as we go through the nighttime hours, things will settle down by tomorrow. A different day. Southerlies blowing up the Lynn Canal, 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. Light winds across the central and southern inner channels. Across the outer coast, you can see a south and southwesterly flow holding around 10 to 15 knots or so. Seas still a little bit on the higher side at 9 to 11 feet as you head up toward Yakutat. And once you get around to Prince William Sound, even higher seas out there closer to the low center. For Friday, winds are still holding around 10 to 15 on the inside passages, more of a north and northwesterly flow. 3-foot seas in all areas, and across the outer coast, a north and northwesterly wind coming down. Looking at 6 to 8-foot seas in all areas. That's a look at your Friday as things start to dry out for southeast. For Thursday, easterlies inside of Prince William Sound, 20 knots with a 4-foot sea, a stronger southeast and easterly flow as you wrap around low pressure here in the central Gulf, 20 to 25 knots, 11 to 12-foot seas there. Northerlies coming down Cook Inlet at about 15 knots. You're looking at about 3-foot seas in the region there. For Friday, across Prince William Sound, northerly winds, 3-foot seas on the inside, 8-foot seas on the outside with that east and northeasterly flow coming down toward Kenai Peninsula. Northwesterlies across the western Barrens, 20 knots with a 5-foot sea, and north and easterly winds for the Cook Inlet region, looking at 3 to 4-foot seas on that 15-knot wind for your Friday in south central. Around Bristol Bay, northwesterlies 25 knots with a 6-foot sea, 9-foot seas down the coast, 25 to 30-knot winds across the Alaska Peninsula's Pacific coast, and northwesterly winds across Kodiak Island and Shelikof Strait, a 3-foot sea, 7-foot seas on the Pacific side, looking at 6-foot seas there as you get into Friday. 20-knot winds inside of Shelikof Strait and for Bristol Bay with a 5-foot sea there, and slightly higher seas there between Port Hayden and Cold Bay. You can see those in the darker purple colors there, looking for 5 to 7-foot seas along the coast and 6 to 7-foot seas for the Pacific coast on Friday. For the Aleutians, strongest winds will be across the eastern chain on that northwesterly flow, 20 to 25 knots, 6 to 7-foot seas there. And notice the southwesterly wind building between Kiska and Shemya as we get into your Thursday. watch what happens as we get into Friday. The winds start to pick up from the south and west. Southerlies around 35 knots there around Kiska to Shemya. 15 knots or 15-foot seas are expected in the region as we get into Friday. Northerlies will continue for the central and eastern chain there as the winds start to switch around for the central Aleutian region there for your Friday afternoon. For the west coast, northerlies are winning there. You can see the build up there in the Norton Sound, 20 knots with a 4-foot sea, 4 to 7-foot seas north of Nunivak Island, and north and westerlies west of Cape Newenham all the way out towards St. Matthew. The Pribilofs, you're looking at 15 knots around St. Paul and St. George with a 5-foot sea on Thursday, down to 4-foot seas there for Friday. A little bit of a southwesterly shift around St. Lawrence Island, northeasterlies inside of Norton Sound, and northwesterlies at 20 knots with a 5-foot sea north of Macoriac, and northerlies as you head southward into the western Capes there for Friday with a 7-foot sea. For Thursday, across the North Slope, broad westerly flow for the entire Beaufort Sea coast and northwesterlies for the Chukchi coast. Again, high surf conditions are not expected at this time, but they're being watched very carefully. Along the Chukchi coast, you should do the same. 8-foot seas expected there for Thursday. As we get into Friday, the westerlies continue 20 to 30 in all areas. A little bit more of a southwesterly push offshore from Prudhoe Bay with 8-foot seas for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, 9-foot seas around Barrow down to Point Lay, and 7 to 8-foot seas outside of Kotzebue Sound. That's a look at your marine forecast. As we take a look at tonight's weather map one more time, one word of caution: the Seward area's NOAA weather radio transmitter is down. It looks like we'll have to have some parts sent in, so maybe by Friday that'll be back online. So if you're looking for weather information in Seward from the Seward NOAA weather radio, it is kind of down for the count, at least for a couple days. So be advised of that, and hopefully things are back in shape for Friday and maybe for your weekend there. So more to come on that as soon as we have it and know it. Up to the north and west, colder air is dropping southward. That's going to bring in some westerly winds 20 to 30 across some of the open water areas. And again, we're watching for high surf conditions. There are no warnings or advisories out just yet. Rain should start to ease up across southeast, but the Montana Creek and Taya Creek River are running high at this point. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. See you again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.